Are the Seattle Sounders ambitious? They seem to be making different moves than we're used to seeing from the highly successful MLS club. They're more focused on bargain hunting than I can recall since I've been following the league. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to MLS Moves. Please make sure you like this video down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that little bell notification so you never miss a video. I brought on Nico Moreno of Sounder at Heart to talk about what the Sounders' future looks like, what the present looks like, and if he considers this team to be ambitious. Now, on to the video. Nico Moreno, man, this is a long time in the making. We've been talking back and forth for several years now, which is hard to believe. And this is the first time we've been on a podcast together or seen each other face to face. Well, online, I guess. I appreciate you for coming on, my friend. How's it going?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. Excited to get 2025 going. This is actually my second full-on collaboration with anyone or any type of segment this year. So happy that is with you, Will. I know that we've been chatting back and forth for quite a long time. You get a lot of heat. I'm not gonna lie to you. You get a lot of heat, but you definitely got a lot of content. You push a lot of information, and I can definitely appreciate what you do. And I do think that sometimes you get caught up by association with certain places that I don't know if they have the best information, and that's why I'm here. I'm here just because I really like you, really enjoy what you do. So let's get going, man. Let's get talking about some Sounder stuff.
Yeah, well, I really do appreciate that. And like you said, I do get some heat, but man, listen, everything I say, I believe. I mean what I say. And what's the old saying that goes? Say what you mean and mean what you say. And that's how I always have been. Now, speaking on the Sounders, they are having an interesting offseason, right? Doing things a little different. Now, some people are excited about these moves. Some people are upset or disappointed in these moves. So what exactly is official or close to being official as far as transactions with the Seattle Sounders as of today?
Yeah, look, first of all, it is another transfer window where Craig Weibel has some limitations, and for better or for worse, and I believe that the thresholds and the goals that were reached by Jordan Morris that now make him this year a designated player were probably in his contract pre-Craig Weibel. I'm guessing that was part of Gard Lagerwey's deal. But we got to remember that Jordan Morris was a winger. And then all of a sudden you put him at the 9. So the goals that maybe you set, the thresholds that you put in his contract that were probably either unlikely or were going to be outstanding for a winger, now he gets to reach those as a 9. And therefore now Seattle is a little bit handcuffed once again. I mean, we've yet to see a Craig Weibel transfer window where things have just gone completely free. All the transfer money in the world, because I mean, Seattle isn't really a big spender. All the facility to get different players. So once again, because of that, now Seattle has been doing some magic, if you will, and that's why I rate a lot of the moves that they're doing very highly, because I understand what's going on in the background. So what's done? Albert Rusnak to Seattle. I believe it is a 2-year, one option deal for the MVP of last season, set by the team. He was awarded with that accolade, deservingly so. 30 contributions of goals is not easy. He has given the Seattle Sounders a threat from set pieces that they haven't had in a very long time. He put up the stats, and look, I understand that he is not a player that is got that flair and that you. And I can say this quite honestly, he's not a player that's going to put the team on his shoulders, which is what you kind of look for out of a DP. So I understand why people have an issue with him not being a DP. But all in all, it's done. It's been signed. He's ready to go. He's getting a bump in pay. He is getting what he wanted really out of this deal. And the reason of that, I believe, is because, look, when you put it in a vacuum and you put his statistics, what he's done, the fact he understands the system, the fact that he has a good relationship with Brian Smetzer, and the reality that Seattle, I don't want to say fears that transfer fee, but they rather not spend money on that transfer fee, right? Whenever you hear about players coming into the league, the biggest chunk of money that goes away and you never see is that transfer fee. And now some teams have the ability to do it and bring them and put them to work and even take a chance. And we could talk about ambition in the future here in the near future in this podcast, because those are ambitious moves because sometimes they're a gamble, right? But Seattle wanted to do this, and they have always been a bit of a conservative team when it comes to this. So why not bring back a Cam that's proven, a player that's giving you a lot, and that all you had to do was give him a new salary. You weren't going to have to spend a big transfer fee because, look, let's be honest. If Seattle was to tell Albert Rusnak to go take a hike, hey, we're going to go look for somebody else, they were going to have to come out of pocket pretty big to replace everything that Albert gave you. So that's the reason why it was such a big deal. It was such a big objective in the offseason to bring back Albert Rusnak. So that deal is done, completely finished. João Paulo is another player that I'm hearing is completely signed and ready to go. 1 year, one option. So 1+1, 1 year guaranteed, one option, one club option. He's a player that I think is going to be very important for the Seattle Sounders at center midfield. They're going to need depth. I mean, they're playing 5 tournaments all around. If they do play all those 5 tournaments, not just that, but I do believe that the Seattle Sounders are going to be, I don't want to call it testing or trying out, but they are going to be experimenting a little bit with Josh Atencio at center back. Because of the new acquisitions, I think that it's very likely that this team will play with 3 in the back, 3 center backs. And because of that, I think that they're going to want to give Josh Atencio some time a line back. So that makes JP's acquisition even more important. Not to mention the fact that he's likely going to be the guy that takes over if everything goes as planned and Obed Vargas is gone in the summer window, not in the winter, in the summer window, because everything you're hearing right now is all speculation. The team, and Craig Webber told us this directly, they're going to hold them through the winter window, and they're not going to let him go. They need him. They really do. It's really hard for me to see this team going on without Obed Vargas because of everything he did last season. So JP's guaranteed of coming back is a security blanket that I feel is very important for this team. Not to mention that he's an experienced guy. He's got grit, leadership. So those are the 2 that are already ready to go, signed, no questions asked.
Now, as far as players that they have been rumored to acquire, we saw that the proposed Jesus Ferreira trade with Liao Chu, I think it was $2 million in GAM and was an international roster spot, I think, as well, heading Dallas's way. When do you expect that deal to be officially official?
I expect that to probably be announced if everything goes well and is done and signed and there are no issues by next week, not this week, but next week. I do think that you'll hear the Albert and the JP probably this week, if not Monday of this week. Whenever this podcast comes out, I don't want to say tomorrow or not, but that's what I kind of wanted to say. It's going to be this week. I think you're going to hear some of those. But when it comes to JP, when it comes to Paul Arriola, I think you'll hear them announced next week. When it comes to Jesus, I mean, look, it's a big package deal, but it's a good deal for Seattle. I mean, it really is because of everything I just mentioned, right? With 3 DP spots locked up, Seattle had very little options to go out there and get someone else who's going to be a difference maker, right? That was going to be an X factor, that was going to up and hit on the inconsistencies and lack of productivity that you had in the final third. And you get that with Jesus Ferreira. Not to mention that you do yourself a favor by a addition by subtraction sort of situation with Leo Chu. Because look, for whatever reason, Leo Chu was not working in Seattle. Him and Brian Messer did not see eye to eye. I can tell you that there was countless training sessions where Leo Chu looked defeated, looked annoyed, checked out. There were times where, like in the U.S. Open Cup, where he was in the bleachers when a guy of that salary worth and a guy that was supposed to be the first U22 for this team should be on the field because he wasn't really a starter at the time. He was in the bleachers with his family, with his kid, just not really involved. And that was Brian's decision, right? He decided that that's the way he wanted to play that. And because of it, I don't think you were going to be able to pull Leo Chu out of that basement that he was at. Look, and I don't want to blame just Brian Smetzer or the system. I think that there were some issues with Leo Chu's play when he came to consistency, when he came to decision making, when he came to defending, physicality, effort. There was a lot of things that I don't think he was checking the boxes in, and I'm not sure if it was because he needed a change of scenery, as in I'm checked out, man. I can't do it here. Or if it was just the fact that he was a bit of a one-dimensional player that had some moments and had a season that was really good. And that season, even if you dissect it and cut it up together, you kind of break down a couple of games. And then after that, you see those ups and downs with his play. So because of that, he was going to be a non-factor. He was going to be a void in your salary cap. He was going to be a guy that was going to be holding on to a U22 spot that was not going to be used. And because of that, I feel like this is an important move for Seattle. The international spot, the GAM, everything that had been purposely worked out throughout the season. And Seattle knew what they were going to be facing this offseason. And that's why you saw them selling international spots, moving around, getting GAM, because they knew that they had to get this big credit, if you will, to get a guy like Ferreira. And Ferreira, for all the heat and all of the criticism that he's getting, because he's not your Argentine, Brazilian, new acquisition. Look, the guy can ball. And I understand that he's coming from a couple of bad seasons, and that I also don't put all on the player. Injuries, a god-awful team, a team that had no idea who they were, no identity, that they made mistake after mistake with, after they got rid of Lucci, I feel like they made mistake after mistake after mistake, and Dallas just wasn't working. So it's kind of hard for a guy like Jesus Ferreira to be productive when everything around you is just falling apart, is changing, is breaking down. So I do believe that the Seattle Sounders are better today with Jesus Ferreira coming in than without. And I think that his versatility in the final third is going to be important. You could play him whatever you want, out wide, as a false nine.
Where do you expect him to play? Because obviously, like you said, Jordan Morris, when he signed that deal, he was ideally supposed to be a winger. Jesus Ferreira, I think's best position is more as a false nine than a number 9, playing more underneath. And then Rusnak is a playmaker. I know that he's kind of played all over the midfield and he's played on the wing, but I think Rusnak is a playmaker. Like you said, he had 30 goal contributions in 2024. So it's like they have 3 guys who maybe don't have, I don't want to say that they don't play the same position, but they kind of play out of position, maybe out of their best role. Who is going to carry the weight and be the goal scorer or the number 9 for the Sounders, at least right now, heading into 2025?
I think heading into it, the easiest, most logical thing that I can tell you is that both of them are going to be working together. It's going to be a 2-man system with 2 strikers up top. That's what we've been hearing. That's what, if you're reading between the lines of everything that we heard at the end of season press conference with Craig and Brian, you can easily find that here and there in bits and pieces. You put it together. I think that this team is going to want to work with both of those players up top, whether it's a 3-5-2, whether it's a 4-4-2 diamond. I mean, I'm not sure. There are many options, but I think that what Seattle wants to do is try those 2 guys up top. Now, if that doesn't work, you can go back to your safe, wonderful 4-2-3-1 and maybe I would put Jesus Ferreira at that moment at the 9 and Jordan out left with Albert behind him and Pedro La Vega out right. So if things don't work, I believe that's going to be your fallback. That's going to be your plan B. That's going to be what the team has been doing, your safe zone, your safe place, your security blanket, if you will. And I think that's the way you'll see it play out. I do think Jesus Ferreira can do a lot of things. His IQ, I feel like it's very underrated. I think that he's a better finisher than Jordan Morris, and I don't know if I get heat for that or not, but I believe he's a much better finisher. I've always thought that Jordan Morris, for everything he does well, because he's a player that is explosive and dynamic and pushes and finds himself some good goals. He really does. I think that he's just not that guy. He's not the guy that, if the game is on the line and I got a guy on a one-on-one with the goalkeeper, who do I want, Jesus or Jordan? I'm going with Jesus. So because of that, I believe that he would end up being the 9 if you got to choose one of the two. But there's no doubt in my mind that the plan, the idea, the hope is that both of these guys could work together up top.
Yeah, and you brought up some interesting points. And I guess there's no one better to have on to ask this question about the Sounders, especially as long as you've been covering them. I sent this to you in the chat or in our messages about how has the Sounders lost their way. We're talking about a team that was ambitious, that signed Clint Dempsey in 2013, spent $9 million on a player like that, who said, we want to be a premier team in the league. We want to set a trend. We want to compete for MLS Cups. And then in 2016, after firing, I want to say that Ziggy Schmidt was fired when Nico Ladero had came in, or maybe he got fired shortly after. Either way, it was pretty close to, the same time.
Right before he came in.
Right before he came in. And Nico Ladero was not a signing typically made in MLS. We're talking about a 27-year-old playmaker from Boca Juniors. That's not a player that Major League Soccer was accustomed to getting, right? So this, and even Raul Ruiz-Diaz or Obafemi Martins, these are players that Major League Soccer were not used to signing. And then you look at their big rival, South, in Portland. Now, Portland is a mess. Didn't make the playoffs. They didn't have as much success as Seattle. They maybe don't spend their money as effectively as you would like, but they are spending, they are swinging. How did the Sounders, you just, like you said, that with Morris and all these players and trying to be bargain hunting, how did the club go from ambitious spenders to kind of bargain deals?
I don't think they've ever been ambitious spenders. And even those two moves that you mentioned are not, compared to MLS today, they're not like, I'm shooting for the moon type of moves, right? And that's where people have an issue. And people have an issue with understanding what the word ambition means. A lot of times people tie ambition with success. And just by definition, people ask or say all the time, there are some guys from Love and Scorchers that I love that talked about, ambition. Look, ambition is just shooting for the stars. I'm an ambitious guy with my, let's say my portfolio. I can use my stocks to be rich by Friday or be broke by Friday, or I could just be conservative and I could just do the conservative thing. There is no correlation between being ambitious and being successful. You can be ambitious and fail. You can be ambitious and succeed. Seattle has never been really an ambitious club. Inter Miami is ambitious. They're the most ambitious team in the league since they came on. I mean, they were so ambitious that they got hit with a whole bunch of penalties for breaking the rules. I mean, they're being ambitious. It's wrong. It's gotten nothing. It hasn't materialized in championships, but you can't deny the fact that they're ambitious. LAFC is ambitious. LA Galaxy, since bringing David Beckham, are ambitious. These are teams that are ambitious. Those are moves that are like, I'm reaching for the stars, baby, right? Seattle has always been a little bit more conservative, and that's okay because that's been their structure to success. You look, I used to talk to Garth Lagerwey, to Chris Henderson, and the way they built this fantastic organization that was successful, that had the best decade a couple of years ago in MLS history, between CCL and 2 MLS Cups, everything that they were able to do in 10 years, they did that by playing it safe, by bringing in guys that were proven players, proven commodities. Lodero was proven. Raul was proven. The players that you brought in were proven. The way that you structure your system was, we're not going to miss on these DP players. We cannot miss. I remember Garcia just telling me, it's like having a DP is like having your first-round draft pick. You cannot miss that, because when you miss that first-round draft pick and you get a bust, it's going to hunt you for 3 years. It's going to hunt you for 4. So they were always in the business of being conservative, looking at intangibles, looking at players that were going to come in and not use the Seattle Sounders as a stepping stone. They were going to come in, work, succeed. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. People have an issue with me saying that the Seattle Sounders are not the most ambitious team in MLS, but they're one of the most successful. There's no doubt about that. I mean, look at the numbers, look at the trophy case. I mean, they're successful, but they just do it in a different way. So when it comes to ambition, yes, if you want to call those moves ambitious to a certain sense because you are putting a lot of money into certain players, have they lost that by the definition of the word? Yes. I mean, and there is evidence, right? Going into 2024, the Seattle Sounders walked into the season knowing, understanding that Raul Ruiz at $3 million was going to play or was going to not play most of the season, but he was going to be a bench player. So you were okay as a club that you were going to have $3 million of your salary in the bench. And I asked this directly to Craig Weibel. This was my question. In a salary cap league, it is not ideal that you're going into a season where you may or may not have Raul Ruiz because he's fighting for a job. And they were like, no, that's all right. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. Man, I knew that he wasn't going to play. Jordan Morris was going to be the guy. If you look at the whole preseason in Spain, Raul Ruiz was relegated to playing with the young kids. It was always going to be Jordan Morris up top, Albert. I mean, there was all kinds of formations that did not have Raul included because Raul was going to be the 9, but Jordan wanted to be the 9. And the Seattle Sounders wanted Jordan to be the 9. And that's okay. But if you know that and you're an ambitious team, either I pay Al Raul or I move him and I go and spend a lot of money to bring in another DP because I know that I want to be ambitious, that I want to attack this next year in a big way. And they didn't do that, right? And to be fair, Craig Weibel and Brian Smetzer, they got to a conference final with that non-ambitious proposition or angle to the 2025 season. So that's where ambition and success don't really correlate. They don't tie up. So that's just the way of the Sounders. And I do believe that they've lost some of that ambition because they aren't making their Dempsey moves. They're not making the Oba moves. They're not making the Raul Ruiz's moves. But they do have a team that allows them to do that, right? I mean, you have some guys that are working well, that are under contract, that got you to a Western Conference final. And that's where a guy like me that I don't know if you follow a lot of what I do, but I'm pretty harsh on the team. I ask the tough questions. I'm right there. I hold them to a different standard. I literally said nobody should be throwing a parade that the Seattle Sounders are going to be making the playoffs. This is the team that should be playing for more. And they did that. I mean, they did get far enough. Was it exciting? No. Could have they done better if they wouldn't have had JP in the bench making $1.6 million, Leo Chu in the stands making 500 plus, Raul Ruiz in the bench at $3 million. Absolutely. So when you talk about ambition, if I don't want to have those players in my squad, I need to get rid of them and come and use that money elsewhere so I can win a Leagues Cup and I can win a US Open Cup that you had here at Starfire semifinal against LAFC, and you weren't able to beat that team. A Western Conference championship that Ricky ended up beating you with a blown knee, and he makes that pass to beat you. You cannot score on Houston in the playoffs. There were just so many things that I think would have been differently if Seattle would have been a little bit more ambitious. But at the end of the day, again, the results are there, so it makes everything that I'm saying honestly a moot point. And Craig could be like, Nico, shut F up, because look what the team did. They got as far as they did. So you're just kind of talking out of your behind, and that's all right, right? But again, I think that when it comes to ambition, Seattle has lost it, but when it comes to success, there's still a team that is proven and that can get very far. Would I like them to change that? Absolutely. I think that I would like them to be, and I think it goes more to ownership, that they give Craig and all of the scouting team a better budget so they can go out there and get those guys. But that just hasn't been the reality of the team for quite some time.
Well, I think another important thing to mention is back in 2015 when they introduced him to the league, they were very, I guess, a more appropriate word besides ambition for the Sounders is proactive. They didn't sit on their hands. They went out and used this new mechanism. They went out and signed Nelson Valdez. They went and signed Roman Torres. They went and signed the Austrian international. His name slipped in my mind. They went out and they signed some guys, and they really went for it.
Ivanschitz, I think is what
Ivanschitz, yes, Ivanschitz, yeah, because they were trying to compete for the Champions League at that point, like heading into the 2016 season for Champions League. So, and then they signed João Paulo, they signed Yeimar, all these guys around the same time. It just feels like their sin, Nico, is that instead of trying to not necessarily flip the roster, but bring some new life in. Look at LAFC. LAFC has been one of the best teams in the league the last couple of years. What are they doing? They're churning new players. They're bringing in new guys because you have to do that in MLS. A lot of these guys we're talking about with Seattle are been here for years and years and years. And not to say they're not good, but it's good to bring in new blood every once in a while to try to get things going. And I thought maybe Pedro de la Vega could have been that. Now, I thought he kind of honestly had a disappointing season, especially for his price tag. And maybe there were some unfair expectations that he was going to be Nico Lodero's replacement, but they don't even play the same position. So I don't necessarily think that was a fair comparison to think he's going to come here and arguably be the best player, be as good as the best player in your organization's history. And Nico Lodero, guy that won your 2 MLS Cups, was there for the first Champions League. I guess they're not proactive anymore. It feels like they are content with keeping some of these guys. Like Jordan Morris has been with the team for almost a decade now. João Paulo, this will be his 6th season with the Sounders, if I'm not mistaken, because I think he came in 2020. I think Yeimar is around the same time. Stefan Fry played his ass off in the MLS Cup playoffs and was a huge reason why they had so much success. So even though he's been there for 11 years, I think it's warranted he should still be there. And we both know goalkeepers can age a little bit more gracefully than field players. But it just feels like they're not doing enough to re-energize this roster. Now, Jesus Ferreira is a good complementary piece. I think Paul Arriola is a good complementary piece. But they need that one guy who can tie it all together, like Nico Lodero, like Raul Ruiz-Diaz. I just don't think that not to use the word ambition, but I just think that they're being very short-sighted. Now, these pieces would be good as role players or just starters, not necessarily like off the bench, but they need that alpha, that guy to carry the team. Like you said, Albert Rusnak's not the guy that's going to carry this team on his back. No. They need that guy to kind of tie everything else together. And, they did make the playoffs. They did make it to the Western Conference Final. But a part of me wants to believe if maybe they had that guy, who knows? They could have won their 3rd MLS Cup. Maybe that this team could have made it to the MLS Cup final, beaten the LA Galaxy if they had that guy. And Rusnak, my issue with Rusnak personally is the Sounders are a big club. Whether they want to be or they're ambitious enough to want to be, whatever it may be, they are. They won the most MLS Cups in the last 8 years in MLS. They're the first MLS team to win the Champions League. And when I think of Albert Rusnak, not to say he's a bad player. He's a good player. Me and you both agree he's good. But the problem is that that's a guy that the Sounders should be able to say, hey, look, you're coming to play for the Sounders. We're the winningest team the last 8 years. We've been to 4 MLS Cups, won a Champions League. You want to play for us? You're taking a discount. You're going to be a max 10 player. We're going to use that spot on someone else. Or, yeah, you can go to Colorado. You can go back to RSL and get paid more money, but you're going to play for a bad team. If you want to chase championships, you're going to take a discount to stay here, not give him a bigger deal and use, like you said, one of those DP spots that would be considered a first-round draft pick. I just think that there are a couple deals where instead of being proactive, they're being more complacent. They're not really testing the waters. They're kind of okay with how things are. They're like, hey, went to the Western Conference Final. Let's run it back. We'll add Jesus Ferreira and Paul Arriola, and we'll see what happens. Instead of maybe doing something a little bigger. I'm not saying they got to go spend $20 million like Cincinnati just did on Kevin Denke as a striker. But man, just anything like sign $5-6 million, and their hit rate on DPs is pretty damn good. Like Raul Ruiz, which is hard to believe, he was there for what, 6 years? Nico Ladero was there for 7 years. Like they're pretty good at their DP. So if they did spend the money, I think this player would probably be there for several years, and they normally hit on these guys. So I think that there really wouldn't be that much of an issue.
Yeah, and that's the way it's structured, right? That's the way that Garth and Chris Henderson put it together, and now Craig Weibel is using it, and Sean Henderson's another guy that's brilliant in there. Henry, there's a whole bunch of guys now that are part of utilizing that exact same infrastructure that has put this team at where they are. But again, it all goes back to playing it safe. So sure, Albert Rusnak is a guy that, like you said, I mean, yeah, they could have said that, but it was very likely that Albert was just going to walk out. Well, he was going to be gone. And the Seattle Sounders were not willing to take that risk because that is the safe bet, right? That's the way that you're going to keep it together. Sure, I mean, look, you want to talk ambition? You want to say, hey, Nico, what would you do if you had a gajillion dollars and you were the owner and GM of the Sounders? Sure. I mean, if you want to be ambitious, you tell Albert Rusnak, come back at a TAM or take a hike. Maybe he takes a hike. I go get, I don't know, James Rodriguez to play that position. Or I say, hey, you know what? I got Pedro La Vega. Let's try him at the 10, and I'm going to go ahead and pay $12 million for Brandon Vasquez, that instead of going Austin can be coming here, and I'll play him up top with Jordan, or I'll put Jordan on the side, put Brandon up top. I mean, whatever you want to do. Yes, there's ways that you could do that, but that's just not the way of the Sounders. Look, Brian Smetzer's staying here as long as he has. That's not necessarily something that people think is ambitious, but it's safe and it works and it's successful and he puts itself together and he's giving you results. So that's the reason why it happens, right? You don't got to go get Tata. You don't got to go get, whoever, right? Because you feel like Brian Smetzer is the guy for the job and he does it. Now, again, there have been times that I've been like, man, Brian's not the guy that's going to take it to the promised land anymore. MLS has outgrown the system of the Sounders, and you need to be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to adding players and making moves. But when you're getting results consistently, there really isn't room for me to be able to say, hey, it's not working, because the proof is in the pudding, right? I mean, the team continues to get where they want to get to, or at least they want to be relevant, right? They did that this year, and that's the reason why they do that. But I'm not mad. And look, I've said this, Jeremiah Oshan, he's a guy that he said it. We have no issue at people being upset that the team isn't more aggressive or wants to go out there and get this bigger players, because it's understandable that over the last couple of years, the last big signing that you had was Raul and Nico, and that's what 4 or 5 years ago. So that's understandable. We have no problem with that, but at the same time, you have to understand that this is the exact same way the team has been working since they have been successful. People say it all the time, oh, I miss the scouting. I miss the scouting that brought Lodero and brought Raul. The scouting is the same. Sean Henderson, brother of Chris Henderson, he's still running the show when it comes to that, but the objectives have changed, right? Now he doesn't have as much of a pool of players, because if he's being told, hey man, this is the money we have, and you got to go out there and get 2-3 players, none of them which can be DPs, go find me something. That's when you get the Paul Arriolas. That's when you get the Jesus Ferreira. But you're jumping at an opportunity. Go back a couple of years ago. This Jesus Ferreira thing reminds me so much of Albert Rusnak's move to Seattle. You didn't really know where he was going to come play. Nico was already here, but you knew that you were going to get a guy within the league, kind of for at a sellout price, at a that 70% off rack at Macy's or whatever. You were going to go get that guy nice and cheap, right? And he was going to come in, you were going to have him, you were going to lock him in for a long time, and it was going to work. Jesus Ferreira was the exact same thing. They pounced at an opportunity of a Dallas team that is doing a fire sale. everything must go, and you go and get a player like Jesus Ferreira. So that's the only way that they could do this, because of the structure and the way they've been doing it. But it's the exact same way. Nothing has changed. That's people's misunderstanding. And that's why your boy from Wavering TV, look, I appreciate that he has his own style, and he's a fan and all these things, but you cannot misinform people on things, because then you create a false narrative that's not there. Like the whole Marcus Rashford thing. Seattle had no DP spots in January. Look, and the guy who said it, I'm not saying he didn't know or he faked the news or whatever, but a lot of the things he was saying made no sense. He was talking about Seattle going after him in January when, like I said, there's no DP spots. There's no room for this guy. There's no way that they were going to go pay any sort of big money for this player, because, again, I'm telling you that the budget's not there. They're bringing in guys within league doing all these GAM moves and all of these things that they're basically trading off for players. There was never a budget. So why are we talking about players that are impossible moves when
Plus, you know how
that's
much
not
he's
the
making,
reality?
right? Marcus Rashford's making like 20 million pounds at Manchester
Come
United.
on, man. I mean,
Yeah.
it blows my mind that people waste time clickbaiting people into this sort of conversations when it's not a reality. It's impossible for a player like that to come in, and then you have people, and this were upset me. My son was like, hey, some guy said that Rashford, that the Sounders were having a conversation with the league about Rashford coming. Those are all lies, man. That never happened. That's just not the way the Sounders were going to be able to make an impact this season. It's not. Very likely, and there's a 90% possibility that Jesus Ferreira is the big move of the 2025 season, including the summer. So people thinking that might change, there's literally a 10% chance that anything changes for the summer window. Now, I'm talking about a DP level, that player that everybody wants, the Rashford, or I don't know, Salah, James Rodriguez, or whatever player that makes your little mind go boom, he's not coming to Seattle. He's not. There's a U22 spot that they can use. There's a couple of U22 spots that they can now handle and go out there and get. I mean, I don't want to say Arredondo or Diego Gomez, but something a little bit below that, maybe 2 levels below that, because, again, it's very different for me to go and scout a player, say, hey, come play with Messi in Miami, than saying, hey, come play with Albert Rusnak in Seattle. I mean, it's, it's kind of different, and say, hey, Tata is running the show, or Brian Smetzer, who's that guy? Like, I don't know him, right? So it's very different to do that for a Miami team than it is for Seattle. So you kind of have to stop comparing these teams at an equal level, because it is an equal playing ground. It's really not. And that's why I applaud Seattle. That's why I am at awe at what they have been able to do at this fan base. That the 30,000 plus that are consistently there, day in, day out, rain or shine. That's the build. That's what made this team who they are, without having to go out there and get the Zlatans and the Girouds or Buangas. I mean, that's just what they've been able to do. So I do appreciate the fact that they have a fantastic academy, and they are a great place to develop players. And you've gotten the Jackson Reagans, the Georgies, you've gotten the Obed Vargas, the Danny Leyvas. I mean, all these players that have been contributors consistently to get you trophies. That's what we should be applauding. Seattle doesn't have to be ambitious. They really don't have to. Would it help them? Would that put them at a elite level? Because, quite honestly, the whole last season, they finally were able to be in the elite conversation because of where they got at the end of the season, but they weren't playing like an elite team. So sure, maybe ambition gets you there. Maybe ambition kind of puts everything that you're already doing well and gives you that plus, that amplifier, the way Nico and Raul did. But Seattle just has a different approach to the game, and he kind of cultivates and he blossoms into success. So it's difficult to go against that idea when the idea continues to work. Now, again, and I have asked this question directly. MLS has changed. MLS has grown. It's a different league now. I mean, the Obas and the Nicos and the Rauls now are, oh, that's cool. But it's not like before where I was like, oh my God, we're getting Nico and Raul. No, man, now we're getting Cucho Hernandez. And, you're getting Giroud, and you're getting all these players that are like, big time players, right? So you have to kind of adapt to the new MLS, and that's what I'm kind of waiting for. I really want to see Seattle, whenever they have the ability to be more open with those DP spots, what are they going to do with them? Because they need to really change and adjust a couple of the things for them to continue to be a top team in MLS.
Well, I agree with that. It'll be interesting to see if they do adapt and what steps they take to join modern MLS. Now, before I let you go, I want to ask you. Now, I'm not expecting a big performance. I don't think you would, if I had to guess. What are you expecting to see from the Sounders at the Club World Cup in 2025? Obviously, they qualified because their 2022 CONCACAF Champions League win. Are you? I don't. It's sad to say this, but are they just kind of like, yeah, it is what it is? Like, I mean, their group is insane, right? They have what is it? PSG, Atletico Madrid, and Botafogo. Yeah. So I mean, it's probably the hardest group in the entire tournament. I mean, are they just kind of like? I mean, it is what it is at this point. Like we're not expecting to really do much in this group.
Look, when the Libertadores champions are the worst team aside from you, when you look into the group and you're like, what's the easiest team? Oh, they're the South American champions of Copa Libertadores with guys like Almada and Savarino. I mean, you're like, that's tough. Yeah, they got put into the group of death without a doubt. Brian Schmetzer, and again, now this is where I understand people criticizing certain things, but he was like, look, it's not about making a roster to win Club World Cup. It's about winning MLS. I mean, it's pretty direct, right? I mean, he's not lying to you. I mean, I think he'd be lying to you if he was telling you, hey, we're building a roster to beat, PSG and beat Atletico.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's out of this world to think that they can get a couple of results. Look, people are ignoring the fact that in this sort of tournaments, the big clubs don't take it seriously till after the group stage. I mean, this is the first time there's a group stage, but before the early games, you didn't get top Real Madrid, you didn't get top AC Milan, you didn't get those. They weren't really taking it very seriously until after a little bit into that tournament. So with a group stage, with 3 games, I could see Atletico not bringing their top teams for that first part or the first couple of games. So can Seattle maybe pull a draw against a B or a C squad from Atletico? I mean, perhaps. I mean, I don't know. The thing that we don't, the reason why I can't get too much into it is because I still don't know how this group is going to put itself together. Look, I'm not going to be like these other guys that are just gassing you up with, oh, this roster shit and all these things. We got to see how it puts together, man. I mean, there's a likelihood that if, I don't know, this group of players really puts it together, what there is under a 3-5-2 or whatever formation, and Jesus and Jordan get going, and Jesus has a resurrecting season. I mean, I can't really say whether he is or not until I see it on the field. I have a whole bunch of names on a piece of paper, but we're going to see how it works out when they're on the pitch. And that's what I'm kind of looking forward to seeing. Once I see that first preseason game, a couple of practices, then I'll come on your show and say, hey, look, this is what Seattle's going to do. But until that time, man, it's really heavy speculation of the nastiest, most uninformative way, right? I mean, I might as well just go put Sounders PSG on my FIFA, let it go, and see who wins, and then come tell you the result. I mean, it's worthless. It's really worthless at this point in time. But I do believe that the team can get a couple of results because we don't know how seriously some of these clubs will take those first initial games, and because I do believe that Seattle, if anything, they elevated their floor. their ceiling, it didn't get too much higher, right? But their floor rise because now you have more experienced players, more depth. You have a couple of pieces that have been proven now. Georgie's been proven. Paul Rothro's been proven. All of these guys that you didn't know you had have been proven. I think Ferreira is the proven commodity, whether you like to believe it or not. I think that's true. Paul Arriola, we'll see what happens. He's not my favorite guy. But if this deal gets done and everything comes around and he's going to be a wingback for you, what can he do for you? I think that now Seattle's worst moments will be at a higher level than they were last season, and that just makes them a better team. So we'll see how that kind of works out. But I mean, are they going to get past the group stage? I wouldn't bet my lunch money on it. I mean, I really wouldn't, right? But will they have a couple of interesting performances? Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be interested to see what they do and how seriously they take that tournament. Well, Nico, I appreciate you for coming on with me, my friend, talking about the Sounders. Hopefully there's some clarification about what this team, their goals are, how they operate. If for people that might be confused by, like you said, their winning ways of like how this club is truly built and how they've gotten there. But before I let you go, where can the people find you at and where can they follow you at?
You can follow me at El Rolo NW on Twitter. I'm also on Blue Sky. What is it? The
Blue Sky, yeah.
Yeah, Blue Sky. I'm still trying to work with it. I'm having a hard time transitioning to it, but I'm there as well. Sounder at Heart for all my English information, including I'm at various times in podcasts, whether it's Nos Arietes or Love and Scorchers. We're also going to come back with Pulso Sport this season. Every Friday from 3 to 4, I want to do a space on X called Let It Out Fridays, where I want everybody to just let it out. What's frustrating you throughout the week? What's up about the team, about the front office, about, Jordan Morris or whoever. We can talk all MLS. Maybe you're a LFC fan and you just can't stand the fact that Elias Sanchez is no longer with the team or Jesus Murillo is no longer with the team. Well, let it out Friday. You can come talk to me, chop it up. I'll have obviously some topics. I'll have a rundown, go through some things, then open up the mics for people to come talk to me. But that's where you can find me. I also wanted to say one more thing about the Arriola thing. I've said this already. It's already on Pulso Sports. I said it on Thursday at Soccer Down Here. But the Paul Arriola situation got kind of difficult at a point. Dallas had a verbal agreement, if you will, with Seattle that they were going to take $1 million of the Paul Arriola deal. In one way or another, I don't know what happened, but they kind of went back on their word and they were like, man, this is kind of expensive for us right now. So what can we do? What I'm hearing is that they were able to reconstruct Paul Arriola's contract before the transfer to Seattle. And now Dallas is not paying as much as they were before. And that's how that obstacle got kind of gotten over. As far as I know, deal's still out there, ready to be approved by MLS and ready to be approved by everybody else, and hopefully moves on. But there was a little bit of a hiccup there that they were able to get over. So I wanted to make sure I put that out for your audience and for you, of course. You've been very kind to having me on your show. I appreciate it. Again, I appreciate what you do. You get a lot of heat, man, but I have no problem coming on anybody's show, including your boy from Rayford TV. That just let him know that I wanted to just check his facts a little bit more. But other than that, man, I really appreciate you having me on. Really appreciate it, and hope there'll be another time.
Yeah, I'm glad that you could come on, and definitely would like to have you back on at some point during the season just to see how some of these moves are working and see if they're not working, and just kind of dissect and see what happened. Because, like you said, you're fair. You'll call it out, especially if something is wrong. Nico, I appreciate your time, my friend. Make sure you go follow him if you haven't already. And until next time, guys, I will see you all soon.